This little presentation, I see lots of phones up right now. Hi. This was the music that was playing when you all came in was this guy, Ian Dury. He passed away not too long ago. He wrote this song called Reasons To Be Cheerful during the Thatcher era, which seemed like an odd time to be cheerful, but he found small things. Getting back in bed was lots of other things as well. And I took inspiration from that, but in a different way. Well, at least a couple of years ago, this was before the last presidential election, I'll point out, I would wake up in the morning and read the newspapers online and get angry and depressed and frustrated and annoyed, and as probably a lot of us do. But occasionally I would notice something that seemed kind of hopeful and encouraging to me, so I would save it and put it into a little folder. And then after a while, I looked and there was quite a few things in that folder. They tended to fall into different categories, so I made subfolders. And these are the subfolders. There were some that were about initiatives that had to do with climate and energy, and some that had to do with health, and new ways of thinking about economics and education and all sorts of things. And so after over at least a year, occasionally I would give a talk like this one and say, look what I found. Things are pretty shitty, but there are people, sometimes in one city, sometimes in one location, who are doing things that are quite hopeful and encouraging. So I found, we're going to start with health. Yes. I also found that as these things emerged and I started looking at them, not all, but a lot of them were kind of locally based, state or municipal. They tended to be bottom-up rather than top-down. I realized that the ones I was most interested in were the ones that were a proven success, not good ideas, not just good ideas. The good ideas, we all have good ideas, but these were ideas that were put into action and actually proved to be successful, which is a whole other thing. So there's a billionaire giving money for a hospital did not count. Because that's kind of a one-of thing. It's not. I wanted things that could be copied, that could be an inspiration for us, and we're not all billionaires that can give money to hospitals, so those do not count. Or rescuing a cat from a tree, or somebody who has a miraculous recovery from an injury or something like that. Those don't count either. Those are some of the rules. There's more rules that I discovered later on. So here's a health one. I'm going to get out my glasses because so you probably know some of this. Overdoses are the leading cause of death for Americans under 50. That means I'm out. But a lot of you were in danger. 64,000 in 1 year. That is, according to an article I read, that is more than the deaths in the Vietnam War, the Iraq invasion, and the Afghanistan invasion all put together. So there's different ways of doing this, but some cities, some places are doing things that have had an effect. Vancouver has, a few years ago, opened kind of shooting galleries. They opened a place where people could get their fix, get their drugs. They weren't making it all legal, but you could go there, it was safe, there was medical attention. They lowered their ODs in the whole city by 35%, and it also had the knock-on effect of lowering crime in a kind of radius around that. Dayton, Ohio. This is Dayton, Ohio. They are celebrating the fact that they used to be the OD capital of the world, not just the US, of the world. And They have managed to lower that by 50%. They changed their tactic from punishment. Law enforcement used to just lock up addicts that they would find or whatever and throw them in jail as if that was going to take care of the problem. It didn't. Jail is not where you go to recover, not yet anyway. So they changed it, often led by the families of the addicts, to programs of harm reduction and treatment, and they lowered it an incredible amount. There's the parents. There's a chart showing the reduction in Dayton. The blue ones, the blue graphs are monthly of 2018. 2017 was before the program started, and 2019 seems to be on target to maybe be even lower than the blue one. Another place that has done this is Portugal. Portugal decriminalized all drugs, everything. And they lowered they sort of topped the list here. They lowered their overdoses by 85%. So, an argument for decriminalization. If the US, if that kind of program were applied in the US, it would save more lives than guns and cars put together. Okay, now we'll go to another subject. Education. This is sort of education and other things. This is actually prison reform. There's different kinds of prison reform that I read about that seemed encouraging and be very successful. This is one of the most, prisons, incarceration, mass incarceration in the US. Jim Crow didn't end, slavery didn't end, it moved to the prison system. And it became legal. Starting in the 60s and the 70s, laws changed in the US that caused incarceration of more and more people in this country, most of them minorities, most of them black people. It was clearly, if you look at it, if someone were to come down from outer space and look at it and go, this is a racist policy. Anyway, in 1970, there were 150 people per 100,000 in jails, and now there are 700 per 100,000. It's gone way up, of course. I think everyone's sort of familiar with that. The US incarceration rate is the highest in the world, and it has nothing to do with the behavior of the people who are locked up. Crime goes up, crime goes down. It has no effect on the rate of incarceration. They are decoupled. The incarceration is not about affecting crime. It's in its own world. So it's not about behavior. It's not reacting to the behavior of people, of perpetrators. It's a policy. So, but there's encouraging news. This is the Bard College, upstate New York. They have a prison initiative that they started which is surprisingly, there's educational things in prisons where you learn skills and this kind of thing. But this was a proper education, a full college degree that you could get while you're in prison. 97% of the inmates who got these whole degrees, who did all this, 97% never came back, no recidivist. The national rate of recidivism, people who return to prison after having come out in the US, is 76%. So whatever happens in there, it's not working. But this is working. There they are. They get real degrees. 85% of them get jobs within 2 months. There's an economic argument for these kinds of programs. Sorry for being partisan, but even Republicans are supporting these kinds of things because it makes economic sense. For every dollar invested in this kind of prison reform, there is a $4 return for the economy. Other universities are doing this as well. Wesleyan does it. Washington University does it. Notre Dame does it. Others will follow suit. I talked to the guy who started the Bard one, and I said, why don't you just expand? And he goes, we're at the limits. We deal with the prisons in our area. We don't have ambitions to manage, say, a national program, but we show these other institutions, other colleges, how it's done, and they adopt it. There's a prison in Norway. This is not about college degrees. This is a prison in Norway where the recidivist rate is down to 20%. Maybe not as good as the Bard college alumni, but pretty good. It's called the Halden Prison. The prisoners, there are no bars on the windows. The prisoners all have kitchens, including knives. They are, as the director of the prison said, all of these people in this prison are going back to society. Do you want angry people coming back into society, or do you want rehabilitated people? So they treat them really well. This is one of the classes. There's a meditation room. There's a recording studio in the prison. I have no idea what the bands sound like, but that might be the question. Oh yeah, so as I started collecting these and posting some of them online, I started realizing that my rules for myself and my collaborators were starting to emerge. The first was that when you do a post, first tell the good news, then state what the problem is, so people understand, well, what's so good about it? Then describe what they did, then give proof that it works, certifiable proof in some way, and if possible, see that if it can be replicated or used as a model for other people. So, climate. Can you tell me how am I doing on time? Am I, this is counting up or counting down? It's counting down? The numbers are going up. Okay, this is climate stuff. This is Västra Hamnen. It's a neighborhood in Malmö in Sweden. They are going to be the first 100% carbon neutral neighborhood in the world. That is happening. That has already happened. This is a German wind farm in that part of the world. It's built by, I think, a Danish company, maybe, but I'm not sure. But anyway, what's notable is that it didn't require any government subsidy. That was a breakthrough a couple of years ago, that some of these wind farms now no longer require government subsidies. They're economically viable. They're making money. Even Lego is, seriously, Lego is a big business, and they're investing in wind farms. Kansas gets 30% of its power from wind. Amazing. Well, yes, not every place is as windy as Kansas. Now, let's see, I wonder if this is going to play or not. One of the most slightly amusing and most encouraging ones that I read about in this area was about the mayor of Georgetown, which is 30 miles from here. Some years ago, they had to decide what the future of the energy situation in Georgetown was going to be. He's, as he calls himself, I'm a good little Republican. But he did the math, and that's his words, not mine. He did the math and realized that sustainable energy, wind, and other forms, was going to pay for itself relatively quickly. So they pivoted, and the entire town, 100%, is run on renewable energy now. Other places are doing this. Sweden is already 85% non-carbon, a mixture of nukes and hydro, and they expect to be zero greenhouse gases. Soon, California and Hawaii expect to be carbon-free by 45. That's a ways away. New York City has withdrawn all their pension funds from investing in fossil fuels. Ireland is the first entire country to divest from fossil fuels. Norway is divesting, but they're still drilling. Part of the sustainable energy and carbon and stuff, we're not going to have time to get into this now, and it's probably other people would be good to do this. There's a whole debate about whether we have to go to nuclear. The math says yes, we have no alternative unless we're going to cook the planet with carbon. That wind and solar and hydro are not, they might work in Kansas, but there's lots of places where there isn't enough wind. But that's another debate. This is, how am I doing now? I see it now. This is counting down. I could have let Dale speak. Okay. Okay. I don't like to think of myself as an advocate, but I guess I am for bicycles and public transportation and things like that. I think it makes cities more livable, and it makes the cities be for people who live in them and not for cars. This is this is the distribution of land use and building in Mexico City for housing, for parking. You can see 42% for parking and 32% for housing. There's more parking being built than there is housing. Well, they started to change that in Mexico City and in Rio. There used to be a law on the books where if you built a new building, you had to provide a parking space for every single person who either lived or worked in that building. They're changing that now so that in Mexico City and Rio, it's like 1 in 4. So it reduces it quite a bit. It's not going to change everything overnight, but it means that eventually people will be forced, because they won't have a place to park, to find other ways of getting around. I have a list of the problems that worshiping the car causes, but those will be familiar to a lot of people. This is, this is the Mexican program being signed. This is kind of how it works, that in the old system, the bottoms, well, it didn't have to be the bottom of the building, but that percentage of whatever was built had to be for parking, the E's, estacionar, and now it's quite a bit less. And if they run over that money, they have to pay a fine, and it goes towards public transportation. Rio did the same. When they do that, when they prioritize people over cars, you get nice streets and walking places and all this kind of stuff that people tend to congregate, and they hang out, and they meet one another, and they exchange ideas, and all the kinds of things that people do when they actually come in contact with one another. Okay, this is one that I saw recently in the last year or so. That's the original gerrymander. I assume that lots of people have heard the term gerrymandering. This is where it comes from. This is Boston, Massachusetts area. One of the politicians designated a district that in his opposition in the newspapers saw that it was in the shape of some kind of weird salamander-type lizard, and they called it the gerrymander because his name was Jerry. So the good news is that 4 different states, Ohio, Michigan, Missouri, and Utah, have all voted to end gerrymandering. Yes. We've got a long way to go, but it is pretty important. If you haven't looked into it, this sort of explains, this is from, I think, Wikipedia, explains why it's important. By drawing lines, it's really this, it's kind of this fascinating graphic math thing where by drawing lines in a particular way, the loser can be the winner. The minority in the larger area, by drawing lines, as you see on the one on the right, red will always win, even though red is clearly in the minority. That's what gerrymandering does. It destroys democracy. It's been happening in the US for long enough, and maybe now we're in the beginning of getting rid of it. Here's some gerrymandered districts. Here are people as an anti-gerrymandering rally. It kind of goes hand in hand with other things, like in a certain way, in my opinion, gerrymandering is similar to the Electoral College, which probably also has to go. But I think there isn't quite the political will to do that yet. But maybe soon, maybe soon. Okay. We're moving on to culture. This one is a former garbage processing plant outside Bogota, and it was converted into a library and an auditorium and a kind of computer center for people in the community, which you can kind of see off to the right in the distance there. It was a kind of illegal barrio. It was a place like a squatter area, favela, whatever. And rather than just kind of razing it to the ground or ignoring it, the mayor at the time went in and incorporated the barrio and said, no, you're going to be legal now. Being legal means you get water, you get electricity, and you're going to get this, and you're going to get a bus line that goes to this. So, which meant that people in that community could now go use this thing, but they could also use the transportation, the bus, to get into town and get jobs, which happened. This is another one in Medellin. This is a little bit extreme because they brought in a fancy architect to make something that really caught the eye of the press. But it is the same idea. There's a library and a cultural center, and the area kind of on the bottom of the picture, which is on the top of the hill, is the barrio, the favela that was reinvigorated. And you can't really see it, I don't think, very well, but there's a kind of aerial tramway that goes up here, which connects that community with the rest of the town in the same way that the bus line would. So that was a library connected to public transportation that completely changed that community. It lowered the crime. Vendors started coming, and the gangs started fading away. This is a similar kind of initiative in a different way, a different kind of culture that happened in Rio in Brazil. This is the neighborhood of Vigário Geral. It's a music and performance group called Afro Reggae. They don't really play reggae as we might know it, but that's how they refer to it. And it's a favela that was completely controlled by the drug cartels and the drug dealers and all that. And there was an incident where the police came in with a gun helicopter and just started strafing the streets and killed lots of kids and all kinds of stuff. And that was kind of the trigger. They said, listen, this is enough. And so rather than going into battle mode, they formed a kind of cultural center where they would teach kids how to drum, how to perform, how to write music, how to make kind of a theatrical presentation. What I saw was a kind of a drum and dance and theatrical presentation that they made that kind of dramatized that incident. Well, it caught on, it continued. The streets became safe. The kids had somewhere to go. They saw a future other than being a drug dealer. the future would be, I want to be a singer and a drummer. And that's what they did. The same thing, very similar, happened in Salvador Bahia, also in Brazil. This is a musician named Carlinhos Brown. He did the same thing. He started a cultural center in the favela where he grew up, and he taught drumming to all different age groups. There was a group that was like this, little kids. There was another kind of adolescent group, and there was another, a few different musical groups that were legitimate groups that had hits on the radio, came out of this cultural center. Timbalada was one of the groups that came out of that center. So it had a huge effect, this thing. It, again, transformed the neighborhood. It wasn't just like, oh, there's a nice music venue. It changed the neighborhood. The money that came in for this place was used to pave the streets and deal with sewage and plumbing and all the other things that the neighborhood needed, as well as the neighborhood feeling like it was no longer this perilous place run by drug dealers. So, along the lines of what effect do cultural institutions have on the cities that we live in and on us as citizens there, the University of Pennsylvania did a study of the effect of cultural institutions, libraries and music clubs and dance centers and this and that on the boroughs of New York. And they found that there were these knock-on effects that didn't have to do with, as I said in Brazil, it didn't have to do with just, oh, there's a nice music venue in the neighborhood. They had these unexpected knock-on effects. The test scores of the kids in school went up 18%. Child abuse in the neighborhoods where there were libraries and cultural things went down 14%. Crime rate went down 18%. Obesity went down 5%. So, yeah, to me this was, incredibly good, of course, but it was also really surprising. And to me, it showed that so many of these things are interconnected. That if you have a library there and a place to hear music and a little sports center or maybe other kinds of things, it affects all this other stuff. That sometimes the way to get kids' test scores up or things like that might not be to beat them over the head or beat the teachers over the head, but to think of the whole ecology of the neighborhood that they live in, because all those things work together. The last slide, I'm doing really good here. That means time to talk, I think. The last slide is a project that I've been working on with Eric, who's sitting up front, and now some of the Red Bull people, the Red Bull media people. We, about a year ago, worked with a school, the vocal jazz ensemble at the Detroit School of the Arts, which is kind of a high school in Detroit, and just suggested they come up with a way to interpret one of my songs, and we'd cut it out and distribute it, which is what happened. They had a great time. They had maybe a little bit mystified by what my songs are about, but that's another story. But this particular one, which is up, you can see it, was incredibly moving to me. When I heard their interpretation of my song, it changed the meaning of the song. The song they did was called "Everybody's Coming to My House," and when I sing it, it sounds like me kind of not saying it in so many words, but it's kind of, you get the feeling that the singer is saying, "When are they ever going to leave?" But in their interpretation, it's completely different. It comes across as being, yes, everybody's welcome to my house. everybody, come on over. Everybody, there's a feeling of inclusiveness and welcome. Was, to me, I thought, whew, man, that's, I hope, what the song is about. So there's 3 more of these in the works. It'll be a little while longer before they're all out. The kids they're in school. They have school stuff to do, but this becomes, these things, they're not all singing things like this one. They're different things. Some is an animation class is doing something, and another one is a kind of a folkloric dance group that's doing something. They're all different, but soon. So that is what I've been doing for a while. I want to keep doing it for my own sanity. I'm trying to figure out now a structure for it, as far as like, I can't be doing all the writing, so we're starting to bring in other writers, other researchers and editors and things like that. And I'm trying to evolve a structure to make that be a continuing thing for my health and the health of, I think other people enjoy and can be inspired by some of these things. Sometimes, as I've noticed in my own work, sometimes you hear about something that somebody else has done that you didn't know about, and you go, oh, maybe we could do that here. So that is what this project is about. It will evolve. And now we're going to do some questions that people have submitted using Slido. Thank you. Oh, geez. Well, I'll read it out. Are the imperatives, we should get T-Bone back in here. Are the imperatives of the surveillance economy commodifying and thus destroying the experience of listening to music? If so, what is our recourse? Whoa. Okay. Following the stuff I've been doing, yes, it's things are changing very rapidly, and in some ways, what we as musicians do feels like it's been devalued over the years, and it's become kind of free wallpaper or whatever. But I find that, well, for me at least, performance is still a thing that I do fairly often. I've been here about 3 times in the last year or so, and that connection with an audience, with public, as an audience member for me, or as a performer, lives outside, in a certain way, outside of the commodification of music. And that to me is a good sign. It doesn't require, especially in some place like Austin, where there's so many musicians playing and so many venues, there's an opportunity for things to be heard beyond the gatekeepers. What else is said here? Oh, music. How has my creative practice, approach to new projects, evolved over the years? In a certain way, it hasn't. I just kind of find other kinds of media, whether it's a film or this kind of journalism project or whatever. In a certain ways, it hasn't evolved. I have been, I guess, lucky enough to make enough money from touring, not so much from records anymore, but say from touring, that I can afford I have the luxury of being able to say, oh, I'd like to do this. And I can devote my time and sometimes pay for other people to collaborate with me on things like this. And so that's not that different than what I used to do. I'm also, my process is usually to let things emerge by themselves, which I could kind of do with this as well. Just start doing something and see what happens, and be quiet about it until its identity seems to have emerged and shown itself. I sometimes, this is Laura's voice. I sometimes think that the only real way to find truth is to skip the news and interact directly with other people. Do you find that this is the case? Well, yes and no. It's another kind of truth, I suppose. There's a truth, yes, in real face-to-face human interaction that is very different from interacting with screens or other kinds of things. Of course, the news has been perilous. It's been devalued. People don't trust it as much as they used to. But I think that's very dangerous, because there is still real, trusted investigative journalism. Without it, our democracy fails. I think we can't move ourselves to being like, well, I get my news from Laura, so whatever she says, that's it. I don't trust the news. Yes. Well, yeah, don't trust your news feed. You have to make your own choices about what to read. Which subfolder of cheerful clippings is the thinnest? Probably the economics one. Probably. There's some good stuff in there, but like there was one that I had written up that I was sort of on further examination, like a year later, it proved to be a little bit not as clear-cut, a little more nuanced than I thought it was. Yeah, so which is kind of speaking of trusted news, it's pretty tricky. It's pretty tricky. Sometimes the sources where you get the information is really hard to know if you're getting all the information that you need. Okay. Wait. Are there any more? The examples are much more connected to developed and rich countries. Which projects are you seeing in underdeveloped countries? I guess, so Colombia and Brazil are not, they're rich. Well, they're maybe in the middle, I guess, let's say. Yes, this is a good point. Why are there not more examples from, say, Africa, in other parts of the world, where we might call them developing countries? There are things there, but I haven't been able to see them in a clear. I mean, there's things in Africa, like people are using these small solar collectors, so they don't have to connect to the grid. They're not beholden to power companies. They have just enough electricity to light a bulb so the kid can do homework at night and they can charge a phone. In other rural villages, they have enough from solar to be able to keep medicines cold, so that, because a lot of medicines that are needed there have to be refrigerated. And if they're not, they go off, and the nearest one is too far away. Anyway, so there is good news, but yes, there is that. What new technologies are making your grade or inspiring you for bringing happiness? Thank you for the pop-up in Menlo Park. Okay. Well, okay, I just named one. I just named the solar one. So, okay, let's move on. How can we get involved with Reasons to Be Cheerful with me? I'm not ready yet, but yes. As I said, I'm restructuring it. I'm getting it more organized. But yes, I'm hoping to open it up to other writers, other contributors. I'm hoping to be able to fundraise and be able to pay other writers and contributors, which I think is incredibly important. I don't expect people to work for nothing. But it's an ongoing project. Does music still inspire me? Yeah, yes. What a ridiculous question. Yeah, I mean, okay, but yes. So no, I outgrew that some years ago, yes. That's over. Artificial intelligence, optimistic or pessimistic? Wow. Okay, that's another whole panel, isn't it? I bet there's been a few panels on AI in the last week. Yeah. My sense is that we're probably aware that there's some things that AI can do, like detecting melanomas and skin cancers and things like that, where AI can beat a doctor's scan or a doctor's diagnosis. And clearly, the technology is incredibly useful there. In other ways, I think it's absolutely terrifying. It's the Industrial Revolution and some other things over the last century or two may have decimated the working class, but AI is going to kill the middle class. It's going to kill white-collar workers, and it's going to kind of decimate that whole area. It's kind of like if you can describe what you do, a machine can do it. So that is kind of frightening because it comes not only with incredible loss of jobs, but the fact that AI is made it reflects the people who made it. It reflects the society that it comes out of. So it's biased. There's an engineer mindset built into it that will then be affecting all of us. Anyway, okay. Whoop. I didn't see T-Bone's talk, sorry. Do I have a goal for funders to get involved in these projects? Do I want to play a role in helping them to scale nationally? Oh, the things I mentioned? I'm not. Yes, I'm not. I'm not at a scale where I can do that. For me, I'm about pointing. I'm pointing and going, saying, look at this. Look at this. Look what I found. Look what I saw. And maybe engaging other people to help me in that effort, and they will do pointing as well. But as far as funding the various initiatives that I've mentioned here, that is for local electorates, local cities, local counties, and states. Will I be performing this week? No, not this. Nope, no. There's a screening, and then I'm going to Dallas for another screening, and having a nice, interesting drive between here and Dallas. I'm serious. There's a lot of places to stop on the way. You know the Dome place? The Dome place? It's near Waxahachie? No? Okay. I'm told that they'll give you a tour if you pretend like you're going to buy one. Oh, jeez. artists from the newer generation of music are inspiring you, musically or personally? Wow. There's an awful lot. I think there's an awful lot that's inspiring. I saw, have I seen in the last year or so? I've been touring a lot, so in some ways I get to see things when I'm touring, but in other ways, no, I'm kind of in my own thing. I saw Chance the Rapper's show a while back. That was really great. Janelle Monáe's show I saw here was part of the ACL, and I saw her at the taping there. That was really great. Wow. I just sat in with a Mexican band, Cafe Tacuba, in Mexico City. They were taping an unplugged show there. They're really great. Wow, there's a lot. There's a lot out there. My favorite news source for clippings. It's kind of embarrassing to say that that I'm looking at, say, New York Times, The Economist, the Financial Times, Washington Post, Guardian, New Scientist, things like that. It's nothing too obscure or absolutely surprising. I wish I could say it was things that were more than that. I wish I could afford to support kind of writing and research myself. That might happen someday, but that's kind of what it was. But I also, when I'm reading, I have my kind of Reasons to Be Cheerful radar on. Okay, let's do one more here. Can I speak on my Neuro Society project? Okay. For a few years, I've been working on a project that is a kind of theatrical experience based on kind of neuroscience, things that neuroscience labs have done in different parts of the world. And the idea was to kind of take these things and have an audience go through a series of rooms, and in each room, a small audience would experience one of these things, and they'd go to the next room, and another group is coming through. So one group is kind of cascading one after another. We did a version in Menlo Park in Silicon Valley in a former car showroom. We did a kind of small 3-room version called Neuro Society, where the perceptual stuff that we recreated and did worked really well. People loved that. With perceptual stuff, for the most part, it's very unambiguous. It either works and people, you get the effect and you're like, whoa, or it's nothing. But we managed to get it so it was something. We did other ones, though, that were much more kind of about psychology and perception and psychology, and those were more difficult. We did one where, based on the work of a guy at Princeton called Alex Todorov, and he had done a study showing people, political candidates, without the names or anything on, just headshots, and you were asked to say which one's going to win. And you'd see each one for just like a couple seconds. And none of them were any you would recognize. But they were all real. They were all from regional Senate elections around the country. What he discovered was that there was an incredibly high percentage of the reactions of just looking at faces, not knowing party or anything else, matched who actually won. It was like, in the mid-60s, the percentage that matched who actually won, which delivered the depressing news that we vote on how people's faces look. There's lots of other factors, race and gender and all kinds of things that fit into there. But overall, yes, we tried a version of that and got more or less the same results. We would kind of average. We had a group of 10 people. They would do it. We'd have a little computer would average it and put it on the screen, and they would see that and go. Their reaction was sort of anger and disbelief, which was not a pleasant experience. It's not pleasant news to be delivered that you make decisions based on kind of frivolous things like how somebody looks. But so in a certain way, the way we delivered that kind of thing was unsuccessful. So we put it aside, but it was interesting stuff to do anyway. Anyway, maybe we should make that the end, yeah? That on that depressing note. I seem to have had a bleak point of view at the beginning of my career. Has that changed, and how you find a hopeful one now? Bleak. Maybe. I would like to think that I'm finding something, some bits of hope that all is not as kind of bad as it often seems, and that, I mean, if I didn't do that, I'd really be depressed, as a lot of people are around the country. We need these things to show us that we are not as bad as we are portrayed when we look at ourselves in the media mirror. We have possibility. We can do things. Anyway, there's a few more minutes for people to kind of just sit here. Huh? What? Okay. Well, thank you very much.